My mother had a very difficult life. She and my father split up when I was a boy. I was the only kid I knew whose parents were divorced. This was a small town in upstate New York. It would have been different if we'd been in a city, but we were in a small town. 1950, in the 1950s, you just didn't get divorced. You stayed together and you hated each other. And you got into drunken brawls and called each other names, but you did not get divorced. And my mother doing this meant that we were in a different family than everybody else. Yes, I did want to go out to Arizona, and I did want to study archaeology. But they weren't originally my ideas. These were little seeds that my mom had planted. She would say, "Well, you're interested in history. Have you ever thought about, archaeology?" And then, as I would get a little older, and suddenly there was a subscription to Arizona Highways that would be, it would just be there on the coffee table. I think, well, that's interesting. And I was thinking about going out there to school within like 4 or 5 months. My mother said, "You know what? I just may come too." I've always said that when you go away to college, it's kind of like entering the witness protection program, right? No one's supposed to know who you are, and when you come out the other end of the program, you're not supposed to be recognizable, to anyone. And so everybody else was getting to go into the witness protection program, and I was kind of there in the world in proximity to the person who knew me best, which meant that self-reinvention wasn't going to happen for me anytime soon. By the time we left for Arizona, she was then in her late 30s. She was still a very attractive woman. But after having lived after the separation from my father in a small town where everybody was watching her every move, living upstairs from her parents who were watching her every move, now she's in a place where she can do whatever she wants. Hopefully she can find romance, she can find someone to fall in love with. And she should have been entering the witness protection program as well. As she became more and more dependent, as the years went by, more and more dependent on me, I continued to think of that as just normal. I was the man in her life, and I was becoming more of a man. I was getting older, I was becoming more of a man. Whereas other people who knew me were beginning to see the red flags, The woman I was about to marry saw that my relationship with my mother was really, my mother's relationship on me was seriously dependent. It's the first time that we'd only been married a few months when my mother had to move in with us. She had a kind of breakdown and she had to move in with us. My father-in-law said, "Don't allow this to happen. This is the worst possible thing that can happen for you, for your marriage." That if anybody had just kind of sat me down and said, "You got to stop doing this," I would have said, "Stop doing what?" I mean, it really wouldn't have occurred to me that I was, instead of helping my mother to find the new, independent, free life she was looking for, I was actually kind of enabling her to close the door on her own trap. It was a different trap, but she'd escaped one, but she was carefully constructing another that she could find her way into and close the door on. It doesn't feel like closure. It did begin. Two things happened to it that changed it for me. One of them was just that both of my daughters said, "You have to publish this book." And for my daughter Kate in particular, that was probably at least a little bit of a difficult decision, because the obsessive compulsive disorder that cuts a wide path through my family comes through my mother's side, it comes through my father's side, it goes right through the center of my being, and I've part of the genetic package that I've given to my daughters is exactly that. So telling this story, it also implicates them. And when I realized that this book was not just about my mother's life and my life and the intersections of those two lives, that it was also deeply about this town that we shared, and what had happened to this town and what was continuing to happen to the town. And once I realized that there was a relationship, that this town that it centered, this town that my mother had run away from and returned to, run away from and returned to, that she had a relationship with this town that was a very American story. I hope I'm not just searching for an excuse here, but I think that there is something to the fact that illness over a long enough period of time has the power to destroy both the person who's ill and the person who's caring for that person.